Wonder Man's creation by Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Don Heck introduced one compelling new character whose origins were rooted in themes of redemption, sacrifice, and moral ambiguity, with complex arc that would continue to unfold in the subsequent Marvel Comics universe. And the poor guy has one of the shittiest lives I've ever read about. Let's learn about Wonder Man. What's up, nerds, and welcome back to Comics and Cosmetics. I'm your host, Danny Santasy, licensed cosmetologist and registered super nerd, and today we are talking about one of the most complex, complicated characters in all of Marvel Comics that really not that many people know about him. And seriously, he has the shittiest life of almost any character I've read about. And look, there's a lot to get into, so we need to get started right away. Making his introduction in Avengers number 9 in 1964, Wonder Man is a Marvel Comics character created by Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Don Heck. He was initially introduced as Simon Williams, who became a supervillain at the kind of control of Baron Zemo and the Masters of Evil. However, as the story progressed, Wonder Man experienced a profound change of heart and ultimately sacrificed himself to save the Avengers, proving himself to be a true hero. Despite his apparent demise, Wonder Man's story was far from over. So as I said, Wonder Man made his first appearance in October of 1964 in Avengers number 9. This landmark issue was written by Stan Lee and artwork by Don Heck. Now, we don't find out the stuff about his childhood until later issues, but I'm just going to tell you about it anyway, because if I try to tell this story outside of chronological order, it will make my brain melt, because just like comic books do so many times, they go back and they retcon and change things or add things. With Wonder Man, it's mostly adding things, and let me tell you something. My brain almost melted just putting this together. So I'll admit, I didn't know a whole heap of a bunch about Wonder Man before I started doing my research. So, we're just going to do this as chronologically as best as I can, just to try to keep everyone sane. Okay? Simon Williams and his brother Eric Williams were the sons of wealthy parents Sanford and Martha Williams. Sanford was an industrialist and owner of a very successful munitions plant. This munitions plant was called Williams Innovation. Sanford was not a nice dad. He was very hard, punishing, and very cruel. He was prone to very rough physical punishments. We're not just talking simple spanking here. No, not for Sanford. When the oldest, Eric, was born, Sanford made it very clear to his wife, Martha, that it was up to Sanford to raise his son. So she did nothing. Just checking. So he commanded to his wife, Martha, that he would be raising Eric in his own tough, strict, and cruel ways. But however hard he was on Eric, he could never control him. And his ways didn't exactly seem to work or benefit anyone, because Eric was growing up to be a little sociopath, often torturing the family cat for giggles, and his dad just completely ignoring the behavior. When Simon was born, years later, Martha refused to let Sanford do the same thing to him. Finally, Martha refused to let Sanford repeat those same mistakes and insisted on raising Simon her way. All this did was just reinforce to little Eric that he'd been born bad and wasn't worthy of that kind of love, affection, and attention. Martha even told Simon that Eric was evil. And because Sanford was useless and she herself was weak, it was up to Simon to stop Eric if he were to commit any evil deeds. Thus, the burden of protecting the family name, so his father and the rest of the family didn't feel shame, fell on a very young, tender-hearted Simon. Despite, however, how hard the boys would try, nothing they could do ever got their father's affection or approval. While both boys were athletic, Eric leaned more into sports, while Simon was more studious and introverted. It's even said that he would rather read a book than eat. Well, once, while Eric was playing with some chemicals in the garage, he actually caught the house on fire and burned it down with his father Sanford inside. Whoops. Simon, of course, because of how he was raised, blamed himself that he was unable to stop his brother from his sociopathic behavior and could never effectively get his criminal tendencies under control. And Eric harbored deep-seated jealousy and resentment towards his little brother for all the love, attention, and affection he got that Eric never did. He felt overshadowed by his brother's success and popularity and, well, charisma. Eric didn't have any of those things. Simon had it in abundance. Simon seemed to effortlessly excel in so many different fields, while Eric truly struggled to find his own identity and purpose. As they grew older, it's revealed that Sanford actually wanted Eric to take over the company, but Eric never wanted it. Therefore, Simon inherits Williams Innovations and starts running it himself. Nevertheless, Simon was not a businessman. He was a brilliant scientist, but not good at running a business. And it didn't help that at the same time, Stark Industries really starts coming onto the field and knocking things out of the park. It caused a lot of financial hardship for Williams Innovations, and the business started to fail. Eric actually suggests to Simon that he embezzle, since, the business is failing anyway. How about you just embezzle that money into my business? How about that? Invest in my business. No one will know. We'll blame it on failure. Well, what he didn't really tell his brother that it was basically an illegal racketeering scheme with Magia ties. And remember, Magia is mafia in the Marvel world. So his brother was off being a criminal with the mafia and tells him, hey, you should totally embezzle your business's money into my illegal racketeering with the mafia. And Simon's like, okay, sure. What could go wrong? So, right away, the embezzlement and the racketeering is discovered. And Simon goes to jail. The entire time blaming his downfall and everything not on himself, who decided to embezzle, not on his father for, let's face it, just being an asshole, and not on his brother, his criminal brother, who suggested the whole thing in the first place, but he blames it on Tony Stark, who literally did nothing but mind his own damn business and build a successful company. Totally understandable. Well, while Simon is in jail, a beautiful blonde shows up and bails him out. This blonde happens to be the Enchantress, who takes him then down to South America to meet up with the rest of the Masters of Evil and their leader, Baron Heinrich Zemo. With Simon in such, let's face it, a fragile and susceptible state since everything that's happened, he's easily manipulated by Zemo. Zemo's like, hey, I've got an opportunity for you. We really want to take out the Avengers. And guess who's an Avenger? Tony Stark, right? He's the guy that caused you all these problems. So if you let me do this crazy experimental scientific thing to you, then you'll get superpowers and you can destroy Tony Stark. And Simon's like, really? I'll get superpowers and I can pay that a-hole back? Sign me up, bro. So he does. I mean, it's crazy and it's dangerous, but he gets a chance to defeat his arch nemesis. So he's like, cool, let's go. So Zemo subjects Simon to this super experimental ionic energy process that grants him superhuman strength, speed, durability, the ability to project ionic energy. However, unbeknownst to Simon, the process is actually fatal unless he receives this super science-y serum. So after he goes through the process, Baron Zemo lets him know. So by the way, I forgot to tell you, if you don't get this super science-y extra special serum injection once a week, this process that I just put you through to give you superpowers will kill you. But it's okay because I have the injection. So as long as you're here with me, I'll give you the injections. And Simon's like, what the heck, man? Like, why did you not tell me that in the first place? That feels like pertinent information for me to have to make an informed decision. But he's like, as long as I get the injection, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. What could go wrong? So now, as Wonder Man, Simon Williams meets up with the Avengers. Like, they stage this big battle with the Masters of Evil. The whole thing was just made up. You know, they staged this heist for Simon to jump in and help the Avengers. And then he's like, hi, I'm Simon Williams. I'm Wonder Man. What's up? And the Avengers are like, cool, want to be friends? And he's like, yes, all I've ever wanted. So he gains entry to the Avengers. All of this under the guise of a new hero, just trying to gain their trust and do right. So he gains access to the Avengers, makes friends with them. But when he does, and he starts spending more time with them, he starts developing genuine feelings of friendship. Like, these guys are actually pretty dope. Like, they just accepted me in, and they actually help people. I think I might have jumped the gun. You know, you should never make decisions when you're angry. His newfound feelings of friendship to these new teammates start really making him question his loyalties. Like, what have I done? Perhaps this was made in haste. I don't think that this Baron Zemo dude is all in the up and up with me. He did say I would die if I didn't get those super science-y serum injections. I feel very torn, very torn. He really feels conflicted, and he grappled with his desire to get revenge against Tony Stark and his growing admiration for the Avengers, ultimately leading to this pivotal moment where he realizes what he needs to do and wants to make the situation better, ultimately leading to a pivotal moment of self-realization and redemption. The issue culminates in a dramatic showdown between Wonder Man and the Avengers as Zemo's plan to destroy the team is set into motion. Wonder Man's conscience prevails, and he decides to fight alongside the Avengers, much to Zemo's shock. He fights alongside the Avengers against Zemo and the Masters of Evil, and then eventually sacrifices himself to save the Avengers by attacking Zemo directly. Wonder Man's attack stops Zemo's plan, but it seems to have taken everything out of him, and because he didn't get his super science-y serum injection, he dies. Yeah. His first appearance, first issue, he dies at the end. Despite the Avengers' efforts to try and save him, they're unable to. And he lays there and dies. His very selfless act earning him the admiration and the respect of the Avengers in the process. They honored his memory as a fallen comrade. So he did good in the end. However, you really really can't talk about Simon Williams without mentioning Eric at all. In a way, it's kind of Eric's origin also, because fueled by his overwhelming grief and desire for revenge, his brother, Eric Williams, fully embraces a life of villainy and darkness, adopting the ominous identity of the Grim Reaper. Eric sought to unleash his rage and anguish upon the world, targeting those he perceived as responsible for his brother's death, including the Avengers, Wonder Man's allies, and in essence, Eric's transformation into the Grim Reaper was a tragic consequence of deep-seated insecurities, jealousy, emotional trauma stemming from his brother's death and their childhood. Unable to cope with the loss and consumed by bitterness, Eric succumbs to his darkness, becoming this formidable adversary driven by a relentless thirst for vengeance and retribution. He will later start to take on the blame for the embezzlement, that it was he who actually embezzled the money, not Simon. The next time we see Simon Williams, though, isn't for another 4 years. It's in Avengers number 102 in 1972 when we revisit the events of Avengers number 9, but this time we learn that after the Avengers tried to save Simon, and they realized they could not, Hank Pym had recorded Wonder Man's brain engrams, unbeknownst to the Avengers, in hopes that one day he could be revived. And then he puts him in this special stasis coffin. Also, unbeknownst to the Avengers, Wonder Man wasn't really dead. No. He had entered a catatonic state while the process that Zemo had put him through actually continued. Wonder Man remained in suspended animation for years, and it's during this period that Ultron, we all know that guy, Ultron, the evil robot that Hank Pym had created, steals Wonder Man's brain engrams from his computer to use it for his own synthezoid baby boy, the Vision. Because he needed a brain. He needed a brain. When Simon's body was about to be buried, it was actually captured by the Grim Reaper, his brother. The Reaper offered to put Vision's consciousness into Simon's body, feeling that a part of his brother was somehow trapped inside the Vision, even though Eric would say such things like, "My brother would never marry a damn dirty mutant." He still felt like at least a part of him was stuck inside the Vision. Of course, the Vision declined this generous offer. Instead, the Reaper, still consumed and maddened by his grief, takes Simon's body to voodoo priest the Black Talon, who later resurrects Simon as a Zuvembi. But he resurrects him as a Zuvembi, and they don't really have consciousness, so they're just really dumb, slow-moving zombies. So he resurrects him as this thing with the Black Talon, who's at the time under the Grim Reaper's control, and he sends him to attack the Avengers. So he shows up at Avengers Mansion, all shaky and zombie-like, and he would just kind of like a zombie, like, "He did it. He's the one who stole my mind." And then he collapses. After he collapses, Hank Pym, Tony Stark, and Hank McCoy, the Beast, take Wonder Man's body and examine it. And they determine that, yes, he is alive, but his mind isn't exactly functioning on all cylinders. But he was slowly recovering, so there was that. Simon was then fully restored to consciousness when the living laser was wearing the powerful serpent crown and mentally controlling him. Thanks to the living laser bringing him back to consciousness, here we have the living laser mentally controlling Simon Williams, Wonder Man. He sends him to go and attack the Beast, Hank McCoy. Well, Hank McCoy ain't no slouch either. He's pretty strong. And he hurls Simon into a wall, like through a wall, and knocks him unconscious somehow. Once you realize just how strong and nigh and vulnerable Wonder Man is, you'll realize what an absolute feat that was for Beast to achieve. As soon as Beast knocks him out, he carries Simon to get medical attention because he's like, oh no, I don't want him to have a concussion, even though he tried to kill me. He takes him to a hospital and gets him medical attention, and then he wakes up, and not only wakes up, but he's got full use of his faculties again. He's good to go. Yay. Once he is back to his old self and he's able to control his own body and decisions, he helps Beast in taking down the living laser. This starts a very long and close-knit relationship between Hank McCoy and Simon Williams. They become best friends for life, for reals. After this event, the Avengers fully accept Wonder Man as an ally, and later he gets promoted to full-blown Avenger membership. Though he took time, because he probably needed to process everything he had been through and attempted to make sense of his new identity. His presence was always kind of a source of tension for Vision, who felt insecure. Because Simon was the whole reason why the Vision existed. Without Simon, the Vision wouldn't have a mind at all. So naturally, that was a little awkward for Vision. And obviously, it was difficult for Simon, who he respected Vision, and even though Vision lacked Simon's memories, the two remained pretty distinct. He still struggled with the existential ramifications of having a virtual duplicate of his consciousness, not only walking around, but living in the same house. That was hard for him, especially when you factor in that Simon was starting to develop feelings for the Vision's wife, the Scarlet Witch. Simon realizes that he came back pretty different. And not just, he knew he had superpowers, but he didn't feel human anymore. The most obvious and apparent change that anyone could tell was the fact that his eyes were now red and glowing. And around this time, as, we said, Eric started telling everyone, it was me. I did it. Mea culpa. The Grim Reaper, still absolutely torn asunder by the existence of both Simon and the Vision, he attacks the mansion again. There's a pattern. Trust me. He attacks Avengers Mansion and decides that he's going to put the Vision and Simon on trial to find out which one is the true Simon Williams. When Simon hears the Grim Reaper's voice, he's like, wait a minute, I know that sound. I know that voice. And the Grim Reaper takes off his mask, and he's like, it is I, your brother, Eric. Dun dun dun. It's like a Telemundo soap opera at this point. The shock of this revelation is almost too much for Simon to process, but he still will not allow his older brother from attacking his friends and newfound family. They start to fight one another, and it's pretty clear that the Grim Reaper's weaponry has no effect on Simon's body whatsoever. And luckily, Wonder Man is actually able to subdue and defeat the Grim Reaper. The resistance of Simon's body to the Grim Reaper's attacks, and not to mention his crazy glowing red eyes, really prompted the more science-y of the Avengers to ask some serious questions about his resurrection, and the brightest minds of the Avengers, including Hank McCoy and Tony Stark, Black Panther, start to thoroughly examine him. What they discover is that Zemo's process didn't kill Simon. No, it didn't kill him. What it did was transform him from a human being made of solid matter to a being made and comprised of entirely of ionic energy. His apparent death was no more than a deep state of hibernation that had him enter into a metamorphosis into this being of ionic energy. Simon was no longer human, and his zombification was no more than his brain acclimating to his new form, his new anatomic makeup. There was no one else like him anywhere. How could he possibly relate to anyone else? This storyline is great because it really explores loss, grief, and the consequences of trying to defy death. It also really highlights the absolutely complicated and complex relationship of the Grim Reaper and Wonder Man. The Grim Reaper, this whole ordeal puts the Grim Reaper on this long path of obsession with bringing his brother back to life. It ends with tragic consequences. Wonder Man joins the Avengers in a full-time capacity, and his relationship with the Vision slowly starts to improve. But this is over time. For several months after his resurrection, Simon really struggles with PTSD and claustrophobia. Obviously, he's terrified of dying in battle dying in battle. And of course, he has these strong feelings for the Scarlet Witch that are slowly growing and developing, but Simon's really ashamed of these feelings, and he keeps them to himself because she's married to the Vision. He has begun to really respect despite these conflicting feelings of bitterness for, copying his brain patterns. But he knows it wasn't the Vision's fault. But still, it's weird. Super weird, He also meets a young Carol Danvers at this time while she was still Miss Marvel. And they begin a bit of a flirtation. They just kind of flirt with one another here and there. But his closest friend and companion turns out to be the Beast, Hank McCoy. See, Hank McCoy is very cheerful, friendly, outgoing, and it's a really good balance to Simon's more introspective nature. It helps him to come out of his shell more. After Simon was living in Avengers Mansion for a while and getting over his fear of death after battling Korvac, the government decided there only really needed to be 7 official members of the Avengers team. And if you did not make that roster of 7, you could not live in Avengers Mansion. Now, they made Wonder Man a reserve Avenger, an alternate, but he couldn't live there anymore. His past crimes were forgiven. He's an alternate Avenger, but he needed something else to do. He needed a job and a place to live. So he starts thinking, maybe I'll become an actor. That sounds like me. I've got a lot of charisma. Why not? Wonder Man stars in a variety of minor roles before just straight up moving out to Hollywood. He did an off-Broadway show called City of Angst that closed after one night. So there was that. And then he got the role of Muscle Man in a children's show called Uncle Elmer. And he was kind of just, like a caveman. And it was a very humiliating role for him. He ends up just being the punchline to all the jokes. He ends up losing the job, though, when one of the kids rips off Uncle Elmer's wig and it gets pinned on Simon, so he gets fired. Simon was still aiding the Avengers when they needed him, and on one occasion, he saves a young girl by the name of Cindy Noix. This rescue of Cindy would end up having a major impact on her, change the course of her life, and she became a staunch supporter and lifetime fan of Simon Williams' Wonder Man. When Falcon leaves the team, Simon is actually offered a seat at the table again, and he takes it. While he's back with the team, he finds out that his old company, the industrial munitions plant, had been taken over by the Magia. So he gets a hold of the guy he left in charge, his friend Madison Dash. Simon decides he's going to go to the plant and get some evidence, and Madison says he wants to go with him. Simon objects, but Madison insists that it was his company too. he deserves to go with him and try to get the evidence they need to take them down. So they go, but soon after they get there, they are totally busted. The Magia knows they're there, and the Magia blows the building up. They try to get away, however, they don't get away enough, and they're caught in the blast. Simon survives, however, Madison is fatally wounded. He does not make it. This has a huge impact on Simon. Not only does he feel the weight of his father's business, his legacy being destroyed, but he also has the weight of an innocent person, his friend's death, on his shoulders, a death that he was unable to prevent. Simon continued his acting career, but had difficulty balancing the two lives. He does start getting larger roles, like he got this reoccurring role as TV's Monster Man that was clearly based on Ben Grimm's The Thing. But the show ends up getting canceled mid-season when Ben Grimm finds out that this alien Hulk creature called Zemnu was using it to control people's minds. TV, controlling minds, go figure. The team gets restructured yet again, and this time Simon actually decides to leave the team and continue to pursue his acting career. Fellow Avenger Hercules uses his Hollywood contacts to help boost Simon's career and introduce him to, producers and studio executives in town. He gets a role on a soap opera called Secret Hospital, which later on Mary Jane Parker would star on. His career continued to struggle, and he gets fired from that show because he forgot to cover his glowing red eyes. Now, remember, his eyes turned that glowing red color after his change, and he did have the ability to mimic human eyes, but it took a lot of focus and concentration. And when you're trying to act, that takes focus and concentration too, so he lost track of it, and they fired him for it. Simon kept in contact with the Avengers, as always, and in fact, when Vision was critically injured in battle, it was Simon who returned and offered an energy transfusion to heal him. But of course, right smack dab in the middle of the procedure, who busts in? The best brother ever, the Grim Reaper. He shows up proclaiming that both the Vision and Simon himself were pathetic imitations of the real Simon. But Vision and Wonder Man team up with their powers combined, and they defeat the Reaper once again. Thanks to Simon's affiliation with Earth's mightiest heroes, he was able to parlay some of that notoriety into decent publicity. He starts getting booked on shows like Late Night with David Letterman. But of course, what kind of friend would he be if he didn't bring his bros along with him onto David Letterman? He brought with him Hawkeye, Black Widow, Black Panther, and of course, his BFF, Hank McCoy, the Beast. Wouldn't be Avengers on Late Night if something crazy didn't happen. So of course, some super science, super villain inventor crashes the party and attacks the superheroed guest panel. But of course, they fight back and save the day. And it just so happened that a producer out west happened to catch this episode of Late Night and offers Simon a job as a stuntman, which turns out to be pretty perfect for him. He does so well on films like The Demon That Devoured Hollywood that he actually moves out to LA. While there, Simon helps form the West Coast Avengers, which will be renamed later. He is so resolved to balance the Avengers and Hollywood, spending half his time in one place and half in the other. Vision comes out as well and actually meets Simon's mother, who accepts him as her third son, and Simon accepts him as his brother. However, of course, yet again, the Grim Reaper shows up, and this time he brought friends. He brings with him Ultron and the Black Talon. The new plan was to upload Simon and the Vision's consciousness, upload them both to Ultron's computer, delete any differences that the two minds have, and what would be left would be a pure distilled version of Simon Williams's soul in a digital format. He would then download said digital soul into this zombified body of a criminal that he had surgically altered to look just like his little brother. It's not crazy at all. The Vision and Wonder Man team up and defend against this, and ultimately Simon is able to convince Reaper that he is in fact his real brother, Simon Williams. And he does this by admitting to him that it was he, Simon, who embezzled the money from Williams Innovations into that illegal racketeering whole thing, and not Eric. The admission not only finally convinces Eric, the Grim Reaper, that this is actually his brother, but it allows Simon to make peace with the things he did in his past. He's able to not only admit it to himself, but admit it out loud. Simon had never really been able to truly feel like he deserved his position with the Avengers. He didn't deserve his fame and fortune, his Hollywood lifestyle, being called a hero. But this moment gave him peace, confidence, and the clarity he needed to finally move on and resolve to be a better man. The Grim Reaper did believe and accept Simon as his real brother, but the revelation was almost too much for him to handle. Like, his brain just couldn't quite process everything that he had done. Like, okay, so this whole time, this has been my brother, and I've been steady trying to kill him the entire time. I killed a dude, changed his face to look like my brother, and I was gonna put my brother's brain in it. What was I thinking? Oh my god. So he panics in like this mad dash and takes off running, but he kind of slips, trips up, loses his footing, and falls off a cliff. Like, bye, Grim Reaper, and supposedly dies. Now, this is comic books, okay? Simon Williams has already come back from the dead, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. I've lost count. His brother's name is the Grim Reaper, okay? Simon took his next opportunity when he was on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson to set this record straight that it really was him who embezzled the money from Williams Innovations, not his brother. And that, yeah, he's been pardoned for it, and this was all before he was Wonder Man, but still, it was him. He did it. He made that choice. His humble admission was seen as very honest and forthright, admirable, and the public loved him for it. See what happens when you tell the truth? His acting career continues to rise. Like, his star had finally started to take off, and he is cast as the villain in the 4th film in a successful Arnold Schwarzenegger franchise called Archon. This newfound fame also provided him with this newfound confidence that begins to turn into arrogance. Fun. It starts to really irk people, especially Tony Stark, who's also very arrogant, so he kind of develops this rivalry with Iron Man. He begins to see the error of his ways, though, after a brutal battle with the Abomination. Like, he really gets his ass kicked, and he has to humble himself, which seemed to happen during filming to promote the movie. But the film crew thought the whole thing was staged and didn't turn their cameras on. That's just bad production. Like, if you get free action, you film that. I'm just saying. Dumb. Meanwhile, the Scarlet Witch and Vision have their twins, and they name one of the boys William after Simon Williams. But there was a pretty big setback when Vision is kidnapped, dismantled, and put back together as an emotionless, memoryless cyborg machine by the New World Order, by the world government. The Scarlet Witch, his wife, asks Simon if he would please donate his brain engrams, this time voluntarily, to imprint onto Vision's mind, so hopefully he'll get his personality and emotions back. And Wonder Man refuses. And it's actually for pretty selfish reasons. He's in love with Scarlet Witch, and right now he feels like, well, if Vision's gone, then I'm going to shoot my shot. I'm not going to help bring him back. Dude, no. So he declines. He eventually truly regrets that decision, but at this point the Vision decided he didn't want him after all. He was cool the way things were. And then after, the twins disappear, Scarlet Witch goes full-blown criminally insane, the first of a few times she does, and she teams up with her brother and their father, Magneto, and decides, I'm gonna go visit my friends on the West Coast. So she shows up in Avengers West Coast, number 56 in 1989. Evil Wanda seemingly kills Wonder Man, then resurrects him and holds him, her mentor, Agatha Harkness, U.S. Agent Wasp, and Janet Pym all hostage inside the Avengers West Coast mansion. Like, they're all paralyzed. They can't move. They can't do anything. This is where it gets pretty dark. And I didn't mention this in my Scarlet Witch video, but evil, criminally insane Wanda starts toying with Simon and mocking how he's always loved her and that she's always known. Starts taunting him like, don't you want me? Don't you want this? And digs her nails into his pretty much invulnerable skin, rips off his clothes, and kisses his special purpose against his will. So she molests him in front of everybody. She did that in front of U.S. Agent Wasp. She doesn't care. She just does. But as painful, traumatic, and violating and mortifying as this is, he never truly believed it was really her doing it. He never believed it was really her. And while Wanda recovers from, entering the mouth of rapey madness and trying to destroy, all of reality, it's Simon that remained by her side and supported her and helped her convalesce. He later asks her on a date, which then gets interrupted by now undead Grim Reaper, of course. Such a buzzkill. But afterwards, Wanda tells Simon that, I really don't feel the way that you do, and I think we should just be friends and just never date again, okay? Wow. She's not nice. Wonder Man battles old foes like Goliath and the Enchantress. All the while, his agent is still able to get him acting jobs. However, Simon wants more serious roles, but that all gets pretty much undermined when the studio hires for him a sidekick named Spider, and then hired his sister Ginger to be Simon's fake girlfriend, whom he absolutely was not interested in. He had his eye on a screenwriter named Alex, beautiful blonde woman who had a daughter. As weird as his life has been so far, I assure you it gets weirder, because he battles this woman who volunteered for a medical experiment where they were using gamma rays to cure PMS and cramps, and she gets turned into an abomination type creature. It's like she gets turned into a PMS monster. They should keep that in continuity. They should. I'd love to see the PMS monster back. Wonder Man and the emotionless Vision get called in to help with the Kree-Shi'ar war. They both were unable to stop this negabomb from detonating, and both Vision and Simon were caught in the blast that eradicated 98% of the Kree Empire. So 98% of their entire population across their galaxy, dead, gone, no more. 98% is billions and billions of people just gone like that. Both White Vision and Simon survive. However, Simon's powers were really, really unstable, and he started leaking his ionic energy. This accidentally grants superpowers to those around him: Spider, Ginger, Alex, and her daughter. He begins getting really short-tempered and angry, and he even kills an opponent he had accidentally granted powers to. His name was Angkor. He could absorb anger. He became like a rage monster, this guy. And he absorbed all of Simon's anger and rage and was getting bigger and stronger, so Simon killed him. He even scared this gang hitman named Freddie Munson to death. Like, he was pretending like he was going to punch him in the face, but he would punch the ground right next to his head. And the guy had a heart condition, so he ended up having a heart attack and it killing him. He had a heart condition prior to this, and Simon had no idea that he had a heart condition, so there were no charges pressed. If this were to take place in this day and age, Simon Williams would be in prison for the rest of his life, I assure you. Because of his anger and growing instability, he was actually asked to leave the Avengers, and he was going to quit acting too, but his agent offered him a leading role in a cinematic version of Macbeth. Now, it has been reprinted as Hamlet, but that was a misprint. That's a mistake. The play in question was Macbeth. But this turned out to just be a ploy by a crime lord by the name of Lotus in LA. She just wanted to get him out of town. While he was out of town, the people that he had accidentally empowered with the ionic energy formed a short-lived crime-fighting team called the Crazy Eights. Lotus actually sent assassins to kill them, and Alex was critically injured, so Simon returned just in time to get her to a hospital. Simon is then dragged into a conflict with Mephisto, and he has to actually go to hell and battle Mephisto and Blackheart. He then learned that he was immortal. Like, that's cool. So there's a plus. Nice. While he was there, he was attacked with false memories and revelations that were meant to confuse and disorient him. But he was able to fight through all the falsehoods, and he ends up embracing his humanity once and for all and rededicates himself to being a true hero. He was also able to convince Blackheart to completely heal Alex by telling him it would really piss off your dad, Mephisto. And Blackheart's like, bet, done. Once he escaped hell, he meets up with the Crazy Eights and reabsorbs his ionic energy, thus pretty much depowering them for the most part. His own powers had finally stabilized, and he even learns that he can fly now. Handy. His time spent in savagery followed him for a while and did cause conflict between him and the Hulk. He never strayed from his path, though, and continued to work and fight to prove himself. His relationship with Alex continued to grow, and they set about actually getting married and even discussed adopting Spider, his sidekick, since his older sister Ginger had recently been arrested for endangering a minor. When the Avengers West Coast, renamed, disbands after a dispute, Wonder Man, at the prodding of Iron Man, becomes the founding member of its successor group, Forceworks. This also reunites him with his longtime love, Scarlet Witch. But the remnants of the Kree attack, blaming Simon for the destruction of their empire. However, their ionic energy cannon malfunctioned and threatened to destroy the entire Earth. So Wonder Man takes it, flies up outside of Earth's atmosphere right in time for it to explode. Of course, he didn't get away in time, and it disintegrates him, spreading his ionic energy all over the skies of California. Months later, the Scarlet Witch finds that she's able to pull his ionic energy back together while she's in a battle with Morgan Le Fay. She soon realizes that she can pull him back whenever she needs him, and that it's his love for her that keeps him tethered to the Earth. She continues to summon him on multiple occasions until he's actually able to summon himself while she's sleeping. Until one night, she summons him into the bedroom, and they spend the night together. Several months later, during a battle with the Grim Reaper, yet again, the Scarlet Witch is able to finally acknowledge her repressed love for Simon, and Simon is able to completely and wholly be resurrected. With his powers stronger than ever and completely revived, he continues to help the Avengers, but declines an official invitation to officially rejoin the team in a full capacity. His relationship with Scarlet Witch caused conflict between him and the Vision, who at this point had regained his emotions and memories. Simon also felt tremendous guilt for leaving Alex and her daughter behind. He just basically ditched her. He went to hell, gets her all healed up, and then bites the Kree and disappears. And when he comes back to life, he's like, Alex who? He actually decides it would be a good idea if I just went and took care of unfinished business. So him and Hank McCoy return to LA and meet up with Alex, and turns out she's fine. She's moved on. She's got a husband. But the trip wasn't a total loss, because while he's there, he meets police officer Cindy Noix, his old fan. And she tells him how much he has meant to her, how he's inspired her, changed her life, and she in turn inspires him. He starts a nonprofit called Second Chances that helps people who are just overwhelmed with situations outside of their control. Moving back to LA to promote the nonprofit caused strain on his relationship with Wanda, Scarlet Witch, forcing them to discuss their situation, reevaluate their relationship. And they ended up coming to the realization that their relationship was basically based on sex, and that they would be better friends. Wanda still had Vision feelings, so they just decided to be friends. He later develops an attraction to Captain Marvel. He and Miss Marvel knew each other when she was using that name, and they kind of flirted, but he never really thought much of it. But now, he was being mind controlled by MODOK, and the only way Carol could think of snapping him out of it was kissing him. I mean, it works in fairy tales. Why not? And it did. It worked. And then it's he couldn't stop thinking about that kiss. And they start dating. But it was pretty much just a fling, and nothing ever really became of it. He also finds out that his longtime agent was actually the leader of the Nobility, a group of assassins, and his agent ends up getting killed by that group. Wonder Man was blackmailed into joining S.H.I.E.L.D. during the Civil War storyline, and it was due to charges of misappropriation of funds in his nonprofit organization, Second Chances. Wonder Man is pressured to work for the pro-registration side in the, ensuing Civil War drama. In addition to capturing renegade vigilantes and criminals, Wonder Man is instrumental in creating televised messages to educate the public and yet unregistered superhumans about the specifics of the Registration Act. So he was their poster boy to make everything look kosher, but they forced him to do it. Following the events of Secret Invasion, Norman Osborn created a new team of Avengers, effectively retiring Wonder Man during the Dark Reign storyline. Wonder Man later appears on television lamenting his tenure as an Avenger. Yeah, he claims it was all a total waste of time, and that using violence to uphold justice has caused nothing but heartache and death. He ends his speech by sadly admitting having Osborn in charge of the Avengers is exactly what the country deserves. After this, Wonder Man's imprisoned as a member of the Lethal Legion. This group opposes the tyrannical efforts of Osborn, and Wonder Man joins to try and keep them from hurting innocents. He's been alongside his old West Coast Avengers teammates like Ronin, Mockingbird, Tigra, War Machine. During the Heroic Age storyline, Simon's approached by Steve Rogers to join a new team of Avengers. Simon refuses, stating that the Avengers have caused more problems than they have solved. And as Rogers leaves, he states that he will make sure that his old allies realize their mistake. After learning that Rogers had disregarded his advice, Wonder Man attacks the new team of Avengers, causing damage to their base and then inexplicably disappearing. Simon refused to listen to any arguments. People tried to reason with him. Thor, Iron Man. Wonder Man states that the dead heroes that have resulted from the Avengers working together should be a clear sign that the concept is doomed. Thor and Iron Man try to tell him these people knew what they were signing up for, and Wonder Man's like, no, I've lost too much. Too many people have died. Wonder Man then puts together the Revengers, a team of superpowered people to stop the Avengers because he believes they're doing more harm than good. He blamed the Avengers for Ultron's existence, the damage caused by Scarlet Witch and the Hulk, the Civil War, the Osborn's Dark Avengers. His team subsequently defeats the New Avengers in a quick attack on the mansion before he moves on to Avengers Tower. He says that he's going to destroy the tower unless the Avengers immediately disband. Although Iron Man manages to trap him in a prison specifically designed to contain his ionic energy, with the Revengers being quickly defeated by the combined Avengers team. But Wonder Man had still succeeded in spreading doubt among the population about how good the Avengers really are for society, particularly since Captain Rogers has yet to officially come forward and counter any of these arguments. Wonder Man later appears to Captain America, Steve Rogers, telling him that he actually feels really bad for the things that happened in the past, that he's trying to redeem himself. And before he can accept help from the Avengers, he's attacked by Red Hulk. He manages to take him down and looks at Avengers Tower, claiming that he will earn his way back, and then later plays a pivotal role rescuing Wasp from the Microverse. At Wasp's urging, Simon later joins Avengers Unity Squad. During a conversation with Janet and Sunfire, he makes it clear that he has no intentions of fighting, and he only wants to help by using his public relations skills and his charisma to win over skeptical citizens. He has made a decision after, going after the Avengers and forming the Revengers, that from here on out, he was a pacifist. That's crazy ironic. Like this super strong, super fast, super invulnerable, immortal being made out of energy is a pacifist now. He and Scarlet Witch actually rekindle their relationship. I say that loosely because it was basically just a one-night stand, and neither one could really talk about it after it happened for a really long time. Like, it was awkward, I guess. During the final confrontation with the Celestial, the Executioner, he allows Rogue to absorb him to give her the power to oppose the Celestial. But, kind of like when she absorbed too much of Miss Marvel, she absorbed too much of Wonder Man. Because he's nothing but energy, he, absorbs into her. It leaves Rogue, with his powers permanently, and him locked inside her, unable to touch or talk to others. Wonder Man's conscience was still in Rogue at the time when the X-Men and the Avengers were inverted by an inversion spell, and Rogue actually used Wonder Man's powers during this battle. So they go to Counter-Earth, and she's captured by the High Evolutionary's right-hand man, the Master Scientist, tries to remove Wonder Man from her mind, but he's still, trapped in there. And after she was unable to see or hear Wonder Man, and him still being in there, she ends up kissing Deadpool, absorbing his substantial regeneration ability, and it acted like a circuit breaker that enabled Wonder Man to actually escape Rogue's body. So once again, ta-da, he was actually free to walk around and talk to Wanda. However, the night they spent together that seemed kind of like the beginning of something beautiful was actually pretty much the end of their on-again, off-again relationship. Now, he has all these amazing powers. He has all these amazing connections, and he's had this crazy, insane life. He has superhuman strength, speed, durability, stamina. He's immortal. He has this really unique, defining ability of manipulating ionic energy. Not only can he absorb it and blast it, but he can manipulate and control it. He could do all these things, and he's died so many times and come back. But the thing that really, really, really sets him apart from all of these other heroes and stories is the humanity inside him. He is this crazy, incredibly overpowered character. He's one of the most powerful characters in all of the Marvel Comics universe, and not many people know much about him. I didn't know much about him until I started doing this research, but he holds this very unique and significant place in Marvel Comics. He embodies themes of redemption, sacrifice, integrity, conviction, and heroism that really resonates with audiences. Throughout his storied history, he's undergone a remarkable evolution from some smarmy, petty, one-shot villain to an absolute integral part of the Avengers universe. Like every major story that has taken place since he came out, he's a part of. He's a testament to a person's capacity to change and grow under pressure, in spite of pressure, in spite of pain. In essence, Wonder Man's place in Marvel Comics is not just that of a superhero, but a symbol of redemption, sacrifice, integrity, conviction, and the enduring power of the human spirit. His legacy will continue to inspire and uplift readers for years to come, ensuring that his presence in the Marvel Universe remains as impactful and meaningful as ever. His relationship with his brother, his relationship with Scarlet Witch, his parents. This man had a life. Like, he did not get a break at any point. He worked hard, nonstop, and there were still obstacles in his way, but he kept going forward. And that's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. What a lesson to teach. Everyone has trauma. Everyone has a past. Everyone has hardships, and everyone's made bad choices. But you know what else everyone has the opportunity to do? They have the opportunity to move forward and grow past it, grow from it, grow because of it. It can make you stronger, more resilient, more determined than ever. And that's what I absolutely love about the Wonder Man story. If you like the content that I'm putting out there, please do us all a favor and make that sacrifice, our algorithm overlords, and smash that like button. If you're new, I hope you subscribe and ring that notification bell so you get notified whenever I'm back with more nerdy content. Until then, nerds, I've been Danny, you've been awesome, and I will see you in the next one. Make sure you check under your beds tonight because
Disney and Kathleen Kennedy are gonna get you!